for individuals.
So
awesome. All right. Good again to see some familiar faces. And I like to say I never like to punish the people who show up on time. So I'm going to dive right in and get going here. And thanks for those who are dropping their LinkedIn in the chat. Always good to see that happening. And I see somebody already dropping in some research too, how researching pain points, concerns, needs, how I'm finding it the most useful. All right, you're research assistant for the book I'm writing, right, Ronica? I get that. I am also using it in that capacity. All right, so you have reached the right place if you are looking for AI for deep research for specifically for marketing. We are going to cover marketing use cases, but if you are not in marketing, then my guess is you'll find this helpful as well. Brought to you by my organization, Hyperadaptive Solutions, can be found at hyperadaptive.solutions. We focus on AI integration. So how do you build those internal capabilities to get AI integrated into your organization? So if you have some AI champions identified, we help move them along. If you have governance, we help you make it dynamic so it can keep up with the pace of AI. We introduce some lightweight activation structures to help AI spread in your organization. I heard an interesting stat the other day. It said that 50% of enterprises are no further along with their AI initiatives than they were a year ago. And so hyperadaptive solutions is helping organizations move that needle. Okay, we already touched on the poll, and thanks for those of you who are dropping it in the chat. I see Corinda, you say you're learning how to use it for SEO and market research. And we're going to be touching on that. So I'd love for you to drop your experience in when we get to that point. Okay, I'm Melissa Reeve, and I am a marketing executive, about 25 years now in marketing, and have been in the AI space now for, gosh, has it already been 2 years? Maybe 18 months. And I am also writing a book called Hyperadaptive, which is rewiring the organization to become AI native. And so you could, if you want to join the waitlist for that book, I would love to have you join the wait list, and you can find that at the hyperadaptive.solutions website. And thanks, Alexia, from joining us from London. Awesome. AI and marketing on financial services. Love to see that. All right. So let's keep going here. What we'll cover today, what is deep research, some deep research tools. We'll give you a demo of deep research. I did have to, I will admit that I had to do this in advance because deep research does take some time. And so you'll see some of that output. Okay, what is deep research? It is beyond just basic AI. So basic AI, it'll provide an answer to your question. Like if you said, give me some top SEO keywords, it'll give you an answer, no problem about it. It'll answer that question directly. It can certainly perform simple web searches. You often see that if you put your query in. Deep research is different in that it conducts these complex multi-step research queries. And so I like to think about it more as a research assistant. So if you had a real life research assistant, that person, in my head, I'm going to a library, right? Because those are my early days of research. Going to the library, pulling the encyclopedia, pulling the books off the shelf, maybe listening to a recording or a video, synthesizing all of that data together, all these multiple viewpoints, right? Because the old adage goes, you can find anything you want out on the internet, any point of view. And so what it does is it reviews hundreds of websites, usually between like 100 and 150 to get a sense of the topic. And then it produces this structured report as a result. And if you ask it to, it will also cite all of the research that it's used. And we'll get into why that's important here in just a moment. Okay, So my computer seems to be a little bit frozen here. There we go. All right. So what also separates it and makes it stand apart is its autonomous operation. So it does all of this querying, all of this synthesis on its own. And it also has this capability to do this large scale data processing. So it's not only searching through the websites, it's reading PDFs, so some really beefy academic reports. It can extract data from that. And again, this idea of multi-source exploration. I know when I've been using deep research, I sometimes run into this interesting conundrum where something is paywalled, but AI has been able to go beyond the paywall in order to scrape that content, which is a little scary, but it happens. And then I go to fact check it, and now I'm either forced with the decision of having to sign up for the site or pay for the site in order to fact check whatever it's scraped. So I think it's interesting in that it actually has access to sources and materials, whether that's academic journals or whether that's an article behind a paywall that sometimes we don't even have access to. Not sure how it does it. If anybody knows, feel free to drop it in the chat. I'd be interested in learning that. The top deep research tools. And here too, like my knowledge is pretty narrow, and I'd be interested in your experience. So I have primarily used three tools on this chart. I've used Gemini Deep Research is kind of my go-to tool for deep research. They led in this field. They do the deeper searches, and this might just be my bias, but I kind of feel like Gemini, has owned search for so long, they probably have access to sources that maybe some of the others don't. And that's just, I'll be upfront, that's just an assumption that I've made, but that's one of the reasons why I have a bias towards Gemini's deep research. ChatGPT, I've used their deep research. It's fine. Again, I don't see it as being as robust as Gemini. And I've also used Claude. Again, fine. I know people who really like Storm. And again, if you've used Storm, please drop it in the chat. I'd love to hear more. I also know people who really like Perplexity, but I just haven't found them to be as deep as something like Gemini and as complete. All right, so let's narrow into marketing and how does marketing benefit from deep research? Well, you can see here, I don't need to read the slide, but I think my takeaway from this is that in marketing, we're generally overloaded, and generally as people, we're overloaded. And we often take shortcuts. Like really, when was the last time that you had time to thoroughly research a market? I mean, the most I've been able to do in much of my career are cursory searches. Like, can I find some market sizing data? I might just hit one source. With deep research, they're not only hitting that one source, but they might also find a source that's 20 or 30 pages deep in the search engine result pages. So that's another advantage of deep research is they're able to go like literally deep into those search result pages to find the most relevant information. And when I think about SEO, it's a battle to the top, right? And so, really, the information that we tend to gravitate toward is the information in the first two pages. And there might be a really valid resource that's 20 pages in that just doesn't have good SEO. And so, deep research is a way to surface that type of content. Um, and overcome kind of that results bias, search results bias, you might call it. Okay, so key marketing applications. We're going to dive into each one of these: landscape analysis, competitive intelligence, content strategy, consumer understanding. I'm going to give you prompts. The idea here is that you should be able to screenshot these prompts and use them in your own, just your own use cases. So the other thing I like to do before we dive in is the idea of prompting for a prompt. And AI can actually help you write the prompt. If you've never tried it, it's fascinating. I like to do it for deep research because it knows how to structure the prompt in a way that will get you excellent results. So this was a learning curve that I had to go through. Ronica dropped in the chat that she was using deep research for her book, and I also am writing that book, Hyper Adaptive. And I started in the beginning, I started to just kind of say, hey, I'm looking for some enterprises that are using AI. Okay, well, that was way too broad. And so over time, I've narrowed it in and I've asked AI to create these prompts. And this is an example of a prompt where I'm writing this book. I'm now on stage 4, which has the following characteristics. So I was able to give AI these characteristics, very, very specific. And then I asked AI to surface 1 to 2 in-depth case studies of enterprises that were so advanced in their AI integrations that they exemplified those characteristics. So you think about everything that has to happen here, right? It has to understand the characteristics of my stage 4. It has to be able to go out and search the internet for those companies. And then it actually has to create the prompt for deep research. So, and then the other thing about this is, can you help me craft this prompt? And before you get started, what questions do you have? And if you're not already doing this in your prompts, I highly encourage you to ask that at the end. And what it's done over time is the AI engines are now trained to think about the assumptions they're going to make and surface those as questions. So what you'll end up getting back when you ask that question, like before you get started, what questions do you have? Is you'll get a list of questions from AI saying, hey, if you don't answer these questions, I'm going to make certain assumptions. But it's better to give it the context and to give it answers to those questions before you move forward with your prompt. Okay, so I asked it that, and then here's the prompt it created when I said, please create a prompt. So I won't read this to you, but I just want you to take a look at how in-depth this prompt is. It's saying for each of these identified characteristics, the research must identify and extract 1 to 2 key verbatim quotes, because then I could take those quotes and put them in the book, right? I said I wanted to focus on high credibility sources, academic journals, reputable analyst reports, credible industry publications. And what this did is it allowed me to pull from the most credible sources. And if I hadn't done that, then it would have pulled from blog posts or other lower quality, maybe a Reddit post, lower quality sources. You can also ask it to identify and extract statistics and put those in a table for you. Um, and then it was important for me to be able to fact check this. So I also asked it to provide meticulous Chicago style citations. And you can see here that even though I wanted that, then it said, oh, 17th edition notes and bibliography format must be provided. So you can see how it took my basic direction and really elevated that into a much more complete prompt. So especially for deep research, I would encourage you to use AI to create your deep research prompt. Okay, so let's dive into these use cases. Market landscape analysis. Let's say that you are trying to evaluate who, sorry, I've got a spider coming off my camera there. All right, spider gone. Who, sorry, key player identification. What is the market sizing? How big is it going to grow? How would you start to evaluate that? That would be hours and hours of a marketer's time. So the prompt that I would start with, and again, you could use this as a starter prompt and then ask AI to give you additional context. And you could provide it with like, hey, I want to limit it to the past 12 months, or I want to limit it
I'm
to
so sorry. I'm so late. I'm so sorry.
just the US. And so, so summarize key findings on the current market size, projected growth rate, top 5 key players, 2 to 3 major emerging tech trends. All right. Okay. All right, another use case. So competitive analysis. So this one's really interesting. Website and messaging analysis or content strategy, advertising copy, the SWOT analysis. If anybody's gone to the local marketing AI meetup, you know that Jason Cormier is big on frameworks, right? So like the SWOT analysis is a framework. And you could ask Deep Research to conduct a SWOT analysis on your competitors. And what it would do is then it would create the report in the output. It would give you the report in that format. And it would tell you your competitors' strengths, their weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats.
Hey, you guys fucking suck. Fuck you, big-eyed bitch. You fucking look like nigger. Wait.
Well, looks like we have some people bombing our meeting. I apologize for that. So here's a prompt that you could use for competitive analysis. So conduct a competitive analysis of your competitor's name for a digital market. Conduct competitive analysis for their digital marketing strategy over the past 6 months. Focus on what were the primary content themes on their blog? What were the major social media campaigns that they identified? What were the new products, services, or features announced? Summarize the key findings and cite sources. So this is where I'd like to show you some results, especially how the results from ChatGPT compare with Gemini Deep Research. So let me just flip over to those results. One moment, please. And of course, I'm not seeing it right off the bat here. Okay, there we go. All right, so I did this on Patagonia, and I said, Patagonia was my competitor that I was researching. When I asked ChatGPT, so this first one is actually ChatGPT, it actually produced a couple of the social media ads that it had. Sorry, I've got people bombing me again. That it had used in the past 6 months. So it did produce some of the primary content themes on their blogs and major social media campaigns identified. So this is great, right? If you just want surface level information, this will for sure get you started from ChatGPT. Here's their new products or services, and here's their key findings. So on the surface, this feels like, well, this is great, right? Like in a few seconds, I was able to get more knowledge about my competitors than I would have otherwise had. Well, while that's fantastic, the other, how many pages do we have here? The other, let's see here, 22 pages is the deep research. So if you now want the deep research on Patagonia, and you want to do the deep dive, this is the output that Google's deep research has produced. So just look down the report here. We've got the executive summary, we've got their digital footprint, here's their website, here's their blog, here's the analysis, here's their social media strategy on each platform. What are they doing? Here there are major campaigns and their initiatives. So I think this just really shows you the difference between a surface level analysis of ChatGPT, which gives you the quick drive-by. And that might be enough depending on what you're doing. Oh, you're not getting out audio. Okay, it looks like it's okay. Most people are okay. Or if you really need this thorough level of detail. So that just gives you a sense of what you can do with a simple chat versus deep research and what that output looks like. And feel free to drop any questions in the chat as well, and I will do my best to answer them as we go. Okay, customer insights, another great use case. Analyze recent discussions. This one's interesting if you are looking for sentiment analysis. So what are people saying? And I know that there's some great social media tools out there that measure sentiment analysis. But if you're with a smaller company or you don't have access to those high-end sentiment analysis tools, deep research is great for this. You can give it that direction to say, analyze recent discussions related to my product category. You know, we did wall Pilates last month, so related to wall Pilates. You could name the subreddit, or you could just say on discussion forums like Reddit or like Quora, and report back to me the main challenges or frustrations users express, the desired features or improvements mentioned. So that's really critical if we're in product development and we're looking for the next big thing. Or comparisons made with competing products, like you could name it. And it's just a great way to get that overarching view of what your customers are saying. And in the beginning we had, I forget who it was, but somebody mentioned using deep research for SEO. And it's also great for that. So again, this is where you could ask ChatGPT, give me all of the keywords related to this topic. But if you go and you do deep research, and it will just give you a much more thorough picture, and it will not only just surf those websites, but it'll do the deeper analysis. And so how that prompt might look is identify the content gaps for my website. So first, analyze my website compared to my competitors. So this is fabulous, right? You can just line your competitors all up and you can put them into deep research regarding the topic, because your product area might have multiple products. So give it a topic, analyze their blogs or their contents or their social media and resource sections to list key subtopics they cover extensively that my site lacks content on. Another great way to surface the gaps. Okay, emerging trends. We might already have some trend software, but if you don't, it's great for interpreting trend data and gathering foundational information for predictive analysis. So this is similar. Identify the content gaps for my website. It looks like this is the wrong prompt. I apologize for that. That looks like a repeat of the last one. But you could do a prompt that says, identify the emerging trends in my content area, or analyze the social media posts, or analyze the discussion forums for emerging trends related to my area. So we say, is this type of deep research, the question in the chat, is this type of deep research for SEO as accurate as, say, SEMrush or AFREFs? I think it's Ahrefs, Ahrefs, etc. I would say no, those are purpose-built, and not only are they purpose-built, but they now have AI integrated into those tools. So if you do have access to those specialized tools, I would say that those are better. I do not have access to those tools because those tools are actually fairly expensive. And so this is kind of a nice little hack for the rest of the world who maybe isn't an SEO specialist. So thanks for asking that question. All right, so as we know, AI comes with caveats. It comes with accuracy issues. So this has gotten a little bit better. I wish I had it in the slide deck, but I once saw a chart that showed how accurate deep research was, and it ranges between 60 to 80% accurate. That's not great, folks. 60 to 80% accurate. It's good, but it's not great. And I know from my own personal experience in writing the book, every time, like every single fact that I wanted to publish, and I needed to go back into the source material and see, does that stat really exist? Is it in context? Has it been taken out of context? Um, Sometimes it just makes up sources. Like, does that link actually go to a live page? So it sounds very, very factual. And again, 60 to 80% of the time I clicked through and I was like, there it is. We have a winner. But also 20 to 40% of the time I was like, I don't even know where it got this information. So while it is a huge leg up, it isn't perfect. It says here difficulty accessing paywalled or private information. This is hit or miss. Sometimes it was great. And when I was able to access the material on the other side of the paywall, it was there and it was just fine. Other times it wasn't. So check everything. Check everything. So in order to get the most out of your deep research, we talked about prompting and prompt for a prompt. We just talked about rigorous verification, cross-reference, cross-check. Can you find that stat in more than one place? I kind of want to show you, since we have some time, how I've been using Google's new AI tool to fact check. So I'm going to go, well, thanks for your patience while I queue this up. I'm going to go to Google, and if it's a funny thing because sometimes that AI mode button shows up and sometimes it doesn't. So if you see this AI mode, it's a little bit different than your snippets. So if you, if you just said like, who is Martin Luther King, right? You would get this. I'm surprised we don't have our AI overview. Like maybe I could say, explain the theory of relativity. Okay, so this is what's called right here. It's called an AI snippet, and that's great. That is not AI mode. It's just a snippet of information that they've pulled out of a website and they've displayed it on here. What AI mode does is it's more like your ChatGPT, and you can see how it very, very quickly went through a handful of sites. This is kind of like deep research light. And so I find it helpful for fact checking. And I'm just gonna pull a little snippet here off of I was gonna pull a little snippet out of my book. But let's just say, please fact check this statement. High fructose corn syrup, since that's in the news, syrup is a result of farmer subsidies in the 1970s. So what I love about this fact checking and why it's important to your deep research is because we just talked about the need to fact check it, is it gives you the nuance. So it says it is accurate that corn subsidies contributed to the increase of high fructose corn syrup. However, the development dates back to 1957. And so, um, it gives you that nuance, and then it links off to sources, additional sources, where you can do additional fact checking on that. So I know my friend and former reporter Ronica is on the call,
Yeah.
and so I hope that she's appreciating this thorough fact checking approach and
I
taking
am. Can I
control.
ask, like,
Yeah.
so how often is that wrong?
Well, yeah, I mean, I usually go into these sources
Yeah.
and just double check and see if I can find that original source that cites it.
Okay.
Yeah. So we do have to fact check, right? That's a reality. And Veronica, is that true? We've always had to fact check, right?
Yes, we've always had to fact check.
We've
It
always
is
had
true.
to fact check. All right. So, all right, human oversight, of course, don't check your brain out. And then break complex research into manageable components. So I have tried to overload research, and I will say it does better when you give it a very specific task. All right, so where do we go from here? You just experiment. It's AI. You just got to experiment, dive in, focus on developing that rhythm, that skill, try and understand what's working for your context. And like I can't say it enough, verify. All right, so that's what I had for you today. Really appreciate your participation, or appreciate your showing up. I'd love to give you a chance to drop any questions that you might have in the chat, and or come off mute and share your experience or what you're using deep research for.
Hi, it's Corinda.
Hi, Corinda.
I was starting to type, but I thought, oh, I'll just talk.
Yeah.
In your experience, would you say that, and I'm thinking of efficiency and, to Veronica and yours point, yes, we still need to fact check. We've always need to fact check. Would you say that this saves you any time? Do you think it makes you more efficient?
Mhm.
I would say, how does using AI affect a change in what you've done in the past? And
I feel like it, if you look back to that Patagonia research, so the ChatGPT answer was just a few seconds in the making. And that was probably, to fact check that might have been 20 minutes. Because you don't really have to fact check the entire report, in my opinion. What you have to do is, let's say that you were going to turn the Patagonia competitive research into a presentation. You're going to be pulling certain facts out of there that you're going to put in front of an executive. That's what you really want to spend your time fact checking. You're not going to fact check the 58-page report, but you are going to fact check the pieces and parts that you're going to be using. And so when I think about that, when I think about, okay, it maybe took, a couple of seconds for the ChatGPT output, and, maybe 10 minutes for the deep research output. And then I spent anywhere between 20 and 30 minutes fact checking before I put it into a presentation. To me, that's a half an hour. I don't know, Corinna, what about you? Like, how long would you have spent trying to surface that kind of research? You kind of have to do the math for yourself.
yeah, no, I think each, as you said earlier, each one of our each situation's different, and each experience is really different. And I think, one thing that I'm just trying to work on as learning all of this is kind of balancing the time spent learning it and then using it, and then also within mind that once you get to a certain place, then you can reuse that information. So, that investment isn't just for that one thing that hopefully is down the road. Now, how fast all of this is moving, sometimes you have to reinvest that, or you do have to reinvest that sometimes on a, frequent basis. So just kind of analyzing that and, trying to kind of keep that in mind as my AI journey kind of it progresses. And, that's just one thing that I try to kind of keep an eye on and just kind of be aware, probably more than anything else, of, what's the benefit here and how is this actually helping? One thing I found is, it gives me different ideas I hadn't thought of necessarily. So I think that that's, hard to quantify necessarily, but I do think that's a benefit. So, some of that offsets the investment as well. So I think there's kind of a mix of things going on. And, I think that's a real benefit is, getting ideas or inspiration or direction, sometimes getting pointed in a direction you hadn't really thought of. So I think all those things for me come into play when I'm looking at what's the return on this investment.
Yeah, and you raise a great point. I have some thoughts on it, but I'd love to hear from others because I think we're all in this boat, which is how much time do we spend learning these tools? It can be all consuming, and how much time do we really save in learning? Who else has some thoughts on this? Or how are you personally balancing this out?
I'll
Hey,
just say,
Oh.
oh, go ahead. Go ahead,
no,
Phil.
please go ahead.
Last summer on LinkedIn, I started following all the AI experts as far as I was told they were experts and just subscribing to different threads. And now I'm overwhelmed with the amount of AI tools. I have FOMO. Should I learn this tool, that tool? I'm just wondering, is all the information and the tools in this new industry, is it all going to settle down so we have a base understanding, or is it just going to continue to grow and potentially overwhelm? I know that's my responsibility to not be overwhelmed, but since I turned that on LinkedIn, it's just AI all the time. And I sometimes things that maybe are important don't stand out. And I'm curious who you follow, and what's your go-to for just general AI updates.
Yeah, it can be so overwhelming. And, I've gotten to the point where, especially on the tooling side, because a lot of these tools, I think outside of video creation, I feel like there are some purpose-built tools, but you have to keep in mind a lot of these tools have simply put a front end on a tool like ChatGPT or
Right.
Gemini or Copilot. And what they've done is they've essentially created the prompts in a better user experience. That's why there's so many, because it's easy to spin up these tools and put a shiny front end that's essentially all it's doing is calling the GPTs. And
Okay.
so I think knowing that you can chase tools all day long, but I'd encourage you to first try whatever it is you're chasing in ChatGPT or in an LLM like that to see if it can do it and see how far you can get your existing tool set to bend in that direction. Yeah, the noise is real. Um, I just have some filters on like Google Alerts to try and narrow it down to like very specific things that I'm interested in. It's so
Okay.
broad. It's so broad. And feel free, if others have approaches that they use, feel free to drop it in the chat. It's a great point, Amy. It's a great point.
Okay. Thank you. Do you follow, just lastly, do you follow anyone in particular?
Yeah, probably the usual set of suspects, right? Lisa Adams is a great marketing person to follow. A lot of people follow Christopher Penn. He's more on the data analytics side with Trust Insights. who is Ethan Mullick is the professor that
Yep.
a lot of people
Yep.
follow. Feel free to, anybody on this call, feel free to drop names in the chat of people you follow as well. The Marketing AI Institute, Marketing AI Institute is another great
Okay, good.
organization to follow for marketers.
Yep. Thank you.
Phil, what were you about to say?
Hey, first of all, thanks again for doing this. I love filling my days with this information, and kind of going back to what was just being said, it's hard to know what to filter and to give this platform. It's awesome. I appreciate that. But as far as how much time should we be spending learning and absorbing versus using it, I try to absorb it as much as I can, and then only dive in when I can think of a specific use case that would be immediately impactful and simple if possible, just to kind of dive in. So on YouTube, I like Matt Wolf. He kind of stays surface level on creative tools, especially, but he'll tell you about updates, and he'll also give examples on how to use some of the things. Another one is the AI Advantage on YouTube. Those are pretty much my two go-tos. I'll put it in the chat. But as far as how to get started, there was one on deep research. I use deep research to discover natural language for a region. I'm originally from in Kentucky, and so I just recently did deep research on like how people are actually speaking in Reddit and reviews, because indications are that as people transition to large language models, that will be important to kind of match their language a little bit more. So I was just doing for all of the website writing, really, just understanding what the natural language was from a region.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Phil. So I think that the two things that come to my mind with the AI overwhelm is one, understanding that there's a J curve, right? So things often get slower before they get faster, even with AI. And the reason is that you've got to figure out, I mean, sessions like this is like great shortcuts, but then you've got to take the knowledge you get here, apply it to your context, and go through the learning curve of like, okay, I need to internally sense for myself what it does well, what it doesn't do well, where I can fill in the gaps, and where the limits of AI are. I'll just give you an example that I just experienced. I for the first time started using AI like just an hour before this to help me with my prioritization. I thought, you know what? I'm going to do my quarterly planning. And as soon as I listed down all my business as usual activities, I was already over capacity. And so I thought, all right, let me see if I can use AI as a thought partner to help me prioritize my activity for the next quarter. And one, I didn't love what it said because prioritization is hard and you have to cut out the stuff that you really want to do. And so it's not that I didn't love what it said because the output was bad. I just didn't, it forced me to face some hard truths. But then when I asked it to go another level deeper to say, okay, now that we've prioritized, help me create a 13-week calendar, week by week, then it choked. Like, so I hit the limit of what AI could do. Now, I did a couple more rounds of it, and I actually was able to get some output that I think I can work with. But when I talk about the J curve, that's really what I mean is in the first time you're doing these things, it is going to slow it down. And so, Corinda, back to your point, you've got to kind of pick and choose what you're going to use AI for and just start to work it in gradually. So, yeah, thanks, Melissa. She says, I need a thought partner, right? Since we can get delusional, like we all want to do it all. So, thanks for that. All right. Well, that's what I had for us today. I wanted to make you aware of a couple of upcoming events. So the first one is what's going to happen to the jobs. And I know that there's so much hype around this. I have written about this extensively, a little bit on LinkedIn, but a lot in the book. And I think it's a good news story in many regards that the media isn't picking up, which means we have precedents for this. Factory automation, DevOps, we know that jobs transform, we know that skills change. We see companies who are on the bleeding edge of figuring this out. We have some patterns that I'd love to share with you. So that's what that session is all about. And then the second one, which is missing a parenthetical, why your AI is stuck. This is speaking to that 50% of the organizations are no further along with their AI than they were a year ago. So why is your AI stuck and what to do about it? So that is a joint webinar with a company called Icon, and I am pleased to be pairing with them on that. So those are upcoming. Feel free to register for either of those. Always love to connect with folks. Feel free to reach out on LinkedIn and ask questions. Thank you all so much for coming here today.
Thank you, Melissa. That was awesome.
Thanks. Good to see you.
Appreciate it.